The island that wasn't on any map the morning sun was just beginning to paint the horizon in shades of soft orange and pale gold when Sundar Pichai stood on the edge of the SpaceX launch pad. The air was sharp with the scent of ocean salt mixed with the faint metallic tang of the massive rocket beside him. This wasn't just any rocket. This was the culmination of months of secrecy, private meetings, and quiet agreements between Sundar, a small team of elite scientists and SpaceX engineers. The public didn't even know this mission existed. It had no press coverage, no official announcements in his hands. Sundar held a thin folder marked only with a single word, Orion. Inside were pages that had kept him awake at night for weeks, strange satellite images, maps that didn't match any known records, blurry photographs taken from the International Space Station of a landmass that, according to every government archive, should not exist. He remembered the first time he saw those images. It was a late night at Google's headquarters, the building, quiet except for the hum of servers in the distance. An email had landed in his private inbox from an unknown sender. The message was brief. You need to see this. Don't tell anyone. Attached were the photos and coordinates. At first, he thought it was some elaborate prank. But when he ran the coordinates through every global mapping system, they all returned the same impossible answer. Location not found. He looked up at the towering rocket, its white surface glowing faintly in the early morning light. Elon Musk, wearing his usual black jacket and a half smile, walked up beside him. Ready to change history? Elon asked. Or destroy everything? Sundar replied quietly, .elo, and didn't laugh. You know the rules, Sundar. Once we take off, there's no turning back. We either find the truth or we vanish like everyone else who's tried. Those words made Sundar's stomach tighten. There have been whispers in private circles. Researchers who claim to have discovered something unusual in the Pacific, then disappeared without explanation. Some said their ships had gone off radar. Others said their communications were cut mid-sentence. No one had returned. The countdown began. Sundar climbed into the spacecraft, his fingers brushing the smooth control panels as he strapped in. Across from him, Dr. Lena Arora, the lead oceanographer on the mission, was already reviewing readings from their onboard sensors. She had been reluctant to join at first, but the promise of discovering something untouched by human history had been too powerful to resist. The roar of the engines was deafening. As the ground trembled and the sky opened above them, Sundar felt a mix of awe and unease. Earth fell away beneath them, the blue curve of the planet glowing against the blackness of space. The plan was to slingshot around the atmosphere, then descend near the mysterious coordinates to avoid detection by commercial air traffic and satellites. For hours, they traveled in silence except for the steady hum of the ship and the occasional crackle of communication between crew members. But as they neared the coordinates, Lena's voice cut through the quiet. This doesn't make sense, she said, staring at the monitor. We should be seeing open ocean. But there's something blocking our radar. It's dense. Like a wall. Elon leaned forward. A wall of what? I don't know, Lena whispered. But it's moving. Through the thick, reinforced windows, Sundar caught the first glimpse. Far below, the ocean rippled unnaturally, forming perfect concentric circles as though something massive beneath the surface was breathing. And then, through the mist, they saw it. A strip of land stretching into the horizon, surrounded by jagged cliffs enshrouded in a silver haze. The island was unlike anything Sundar had ever seen. The trees were enormous, their canopies glowing faintly as if lit from within. Rivers of deep blue water carved winding paths through valleys, but the strangest thing was the air above the island. It shimmered almost as if it were made of liquid. Light. There's no record of this place anywhere, Lena murmured, her voice shaking. The landing was rough. The ship scraped against the edge of a cliff before finally settling in a flat clearing. As the engines powered down, the silence that followed was almost suffocating. Sundar unbuckled his harness and stepped onto the alien soil. The ground felt softer than sand, yet firmer than grass. and it gave off a faint warmth under his boots. A strange, melodic hum drifted through the air, coming from somewhere deep within the island. It wasn't mechanical. It sounded almost alive, like the earth itself was singing. What is that sound? Sundar asked. Lena didn't answer. She was staring at something on the edge of the clearing. Sundar followed her gaze and froze. There, half hidden behind thick vines, was a towering stone archway covered in markings, unlike any language known to man. Some of the symbols seemed to shift and twist as they looked at them, as if resisting being understood. Elon stepped closer, brushing away the vines. This wasn't built by accident, he said. Sundar reached out and touched one of the symbols. Instantly, a pulse of light shot through the archway, and the air inside it began to ripple like water. The hum grew louder. And then, from somewhere, deep inside the forest, came the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, and impossibly heavy. Something was coming toward them. The crew froze, eyes locked on the dark tree line. The footsteps stopped. For a moment, there was only silence, and then a voice, deep and resonant, spoke from the shadows. You shouldn't have come here. Asterisk, the voice in the shadows. Sound of that voice seemed to hang in the air, heavy and uncheckable, as if the very trees were holding their breath. Sundar's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to stand still, his eyes scanning the wall of green before them. The forest ahead was dense, its shadows almost unnaturally dark, like they swallowed the morning light before it could reach the ground. The vines twisted around each other like veins, and the giant leaves dripped with slow, deliberate drops of water that echoed against the silence. No one moved. Even Elon, who normally thrived in moments of tension, was unnervingly quiet. Lena's fingers tightened around the edge of her tablet, her knuckles turning pale. The only sound now was that faint, unending hum that seemed to rise from the very soil beneath their feet, mixing with the distant rhythm of those heavy footsteps they had just heard. Sundar swallowed, the back of his throat dry. Who's there? He called out, his voice steady but lower than usual. There was no immediate answer. Instead, the forest seemed to shift, as if the trees themselves were leaning closer to listen. Then, with a slow rustle, something began to emerge from the darkness. At first, Sundar thought it was a trick of the light. The figure was tall, impossibly tall, at least 9 feet, its outline strangely blurred, like heat waves on a hot road. As it stepped into the light, the details became clearer. It wasn't human in the way Sundar knew humans. The figure's skin was a deep weathered bronze, its surface marked with intricate lines that glowed faintly, almost identical to the symbols on the stone archway. Its eyes were the most unsettling, silver, bright, and ancient, as though they had watched the birth and death of worlds. The being stopped several meters from them, tilting its head slightly, examining each member of the crew in silence. There was no obvious hostility in its posture, but there was no welcome either. You have crossed the threshold, it said at last, its voice low and resonant, like a drumbeat underwater. Few who do return. Elon stepped forward, hands slightly raised. We're here in peace. We're explorers. We just want to understand this place. The being's silver eyes locked on him, unblinking. Understanding comes with cost. Before anyone could speak, the ground beneath them trembled. A deep vibration ran through the clearing, rattling the rocket's landing struts. From beyond the archway, a wave of shimmering light spread outward, washing over them. Sundar felt it pass through his body like warm water, and for a moment his vision blurred. Images flashed in his mind. Towering cities made of crystal, skies filled with strange aircraft, oceans glowing with currents of light. And then, just as suddenly, it was gone. He staggered back, catching his breath. What was that? The being's gaze shifted to Sundar. The island remembers. It shows you fragments of what once was and what may come. Lena stepped forward now, unable to hide her excitement. Are you saying this place existed long before any known civilization? The being's expression didn't change. Long before yours. And long after, if you are not careful. The hum in the air seemed to grow louder, vibrating through their bones. The being gestured toward the archway. You came seeking answers. But before you may enter, you must prove you are not like the others who came and fell. Fell? Sundar asked, his brow a few without answering. The being turned and began walking toward the forest. Follow, or leave. Elan glanced at Sundar. Your call. Sundar hesitated, looking back at the ship. Everything in his training told him not to leave their primary mode of escape unguarded. But there was something in the being's voice, something unspoken, that told him they wouldn't get another chance. We go, Sundar said quietly. The forest swallowed them as soon as they stepped beyond the clearing. The air grew warmer, thicker, filled with scents that were both sweet and unsettling. Massive roots arched over the path like natural bridges, and strange flowers the size of a human head opened as they passed, releasing tiny motes of golden dust into the air. Sundar brushed one away from his face and felt it dissolve instantly, leaving behind a faint tingling sensation on his skin dot as they walked. Sundar noticed something odd. There were no animal sounds, no birds, no insects, nothing. The only noise was the hum, now so deep and low that it felt almost like a heartbeat. After nearly an hour, they arrived at a vast clearing. At its center was a circular pool of water, perfectly still and reflecting the sky like a mirror. Around its edges stood 12 massive stone pillars, each carved with the same shifting symbols they had seen before. The being stopped at the edge of the pool and turned to face them. The island will decide if you may stay, it said. Lena frowned. And if it decides we can't? The being's silver eyes did not waver. Then you will join the others who never left. A cold chill slid down Sundar's spine. But before he could ask anything else, the surface of the water began to ripple, though there was no wind. Slowly, shapes began to form in its depths. Shapes that made Sundar's breath catch. It was his own face. Younger, thinner, sitting at a desk in his small childhood home in India. He could see his mother in the background, cooking in their tiny kitchen. The scene shifted, showing him working late nights in his early days at Google, the exhaustion on his face, the sacrifices he had made. Then it changed again, showing moments of regret he had buried deep, friends he had lost touch with, people he had promised to help but couldn't. He realized with a sinking feeling that this pool was not showing random inches. It was showing him his own truths, the pieces of his soul he couldn't hide. One by one. The pool began to show the others their own reflections, each unique, each deeply personal. Lena's face paled as she saw hers, and Alon's jaw tightened as his eyes narrowed at whatever past the water was revealing to him. The being stepped closer. The island sees what you are. It will judge if your purpose is worthy. Only those who pass may step beyond the arch. The hum grew louder, almost painfully so now, and the water in the pool began to glow. Sundar could feel the air pressing against his skin, almost like invisible hands, and then the voice, not the being's, but something deeper, older, filled his mind. One of you carries the key. One of you will not leave alive. Sundar's eyes widened. And when he looked at Lena and Alan, he saw they had both heard it too. Asterisk, the island's first triumph words, lingered in Sundar's mind like smoke that refused to clear. One of you carries the key. One of you will not leave alive. It wasn't just the meaning that disturbed him. It was the way the voice had felt. Not like sound, but like thought pressed directly into his consciousness, bypassing every barrier of language. It had been cold, steady, and absolutely certain. He glanced at Elon and Lena. Their faces were tense, eyes darting between each other and the towering being that stood silently beside the glowing pool. The being seemed unaffected by the voice, as if it had expected this moment. Its silver eyes reflected the light of the water. Unreadable. What does that mean? Lena asked finally, her voice tight. What key? What is it talking about? Alon's tone was sharper. And will not leave alive? Is that supposed to be a threat? The being did not move. The island speaks only truth. It will show. You the path, and you will either follow it or fail. And if we fail, Elon pressed, then the island will take what it is owed. Sundar's mind was working quickly, but every possibility seemed equally troubling. If one of them carried the key, it could mean knowledge, an object, or something more abstract, a quality, a memory, a decision yet to be made. But the second part was harder to ignore. Someone would not leave alive. The being gestured. Toward a narrow path, got led away from the pool, deeper into the forest. Your trial awaits. They followed in uneasy silence. The path wound through towering roots and low-hanging vines, the light filtering down in strange, shifting patterns as though the forest canopy was alive, moving to hide the sky. The air grew thicker, humid, carrying the scent of earth after rain and something faintly metallic, like blood. Sundar noticed the subtle changes around them. The hum beneath their feet was still present, but now it seemed to pulse in irregular waves, almost like a heartbeat quickening. The trees here were older, their trunks so wide that 3 people together couldn't wrap their arms around one. Carved into their bark were the same glowing symbols they had seen on the archway and the pillars, but here they seemed more chaotic, twisting into shapes that made his vision blur if he looked too long. After nearly an hour, they reached another clearing. At its center stood a massive stone circle, its surface cracked but still whole. In the middle of the circle was a pedestal, and on it lay a single object, a sphere made of what looked like glass, but with faint lights moving inside it, swirling like tiny galaxies. The being stopped at the edge of the circle. Is the heartstone. It listens, it learns, it will decide. Lena stepped closer, curiosity flickering in her eyes. Decide what? Who carries the key? The being said, simply. The sphere pulsed faintly, as if aware of their presence. Sundar felt something deep in his chest, a low vibration that seemed to align with the sphere's light. He couldn't explain why, but a part of him already knew the object was dangerous, not in a way that could be measured or avoided, but in a way that would change whoever touched it. Elon broke the silence. So what, we just walk up and pick it up? That's the trial. Not all trials are of strength, the being replied. Some are of truth. The heartstone will see you as you are, not as you pretend to be. Sundar's mind went back to the pool of visions, the moments from his past he had almost forgotten. And he wondered what else the island could find buried inside him. Only one may step forward, the being continued. The heartstone will know. Immediately, the tension between the 3 of them grew heavier. Who would go? Who should go? Sundar could see the questions written across their faces. If the sphere truly revealed the key, then whoever touched it would either be chosen or marked for death. Elon crossed his arms. Well, I'm not waiting for a vote. I'll do it. But before he could move, the sphere's light flickered sharply, almost like a warning. The being raised one long arm. It has chosen. They all froze. Slowly, the being turned its gaze toward Sundar. A cold shiver moved down his spine. Me? The being did not answer, but stepped aside, opening the path to the pedestal. Sundar single quotes S legs felt heavy as he walked forward. Each step echoed in the quiet clearing, and the closer he came to the heartstone, the more the hum in the ground grew, until it was a deep, steady thrum that filled his bones. The air around the pedestal was warmer, and when he reached out his hand, the sphere's surface rippled like liquid glass. The moment his fingers touched it, the world fell away. He was no longer in the forest. He stood in the middle of an endless plain under a black sky filled with stars he didn't recognize. Before him rose a city made entirely of light, its towers shimmering like they were woven from energy. The streets pulsed with streams of luminous water, and strange winged figures moved gracefully between the buildings. A voice spoke behind him, not the same one from the pool, but still old, deep, and knowing. You are the bridge, it said. Your choice will decide the fate of this place and your own world. What choice? Sundar asked, turning to see nothing but shadows to open, or to seal. One path will change history. The other will erase it. Before he could speak again, the vision shifted violently. The shining city crumbled into dust, the sky turning red as great waves consumed the land. He saw faces, human faces, screaming, running, reaching out before vanishing into the void dot, and then he was back in the clearing. His hand still on the sphere .elon, and Lena were staring at him. What happened? Lena asked quickly. Sundar pulled his hand back slowly. It showed me something. A city. Destruction. It said I had to make a choice. The being stepped closer. The choice will come sooner than you think. Before Sundar could ask what that meant, a sound erupted. From the forest, a deep rumbling roar that shook the ground. The trees at the far end of the clearing began to sway violently, and through the gaps in the foliage, they saw movement. Something huge was coming. Asterisk. The guardian. The roar wasn't just sound. It was pressure. Rolling through the ground, vibrating up through Sundar's feet into his chest. It was the kind of noise that carried weight, like the earth itself was announcing something ancient and angry. The air changed almost instantly, thickening with heat and a strange metallic scent, as if the very oxygen had been altered. The trees at the far end of the clearing groaned and splintered as something massive forced its way through them. Sundar's instincts screamed at him to move, but his legs stayed rooted, eyes locked on the shifting green wall ahead. Elon's jaw tightened, his body subtly leaning forward, ready to react, while Lena took a single step back, her hand tightening around the small scanner she carried, though Sundar doubted the device could do anything against what was coming. Then it stepped into view. Asterisk. The creature was unlike anything Sundar had ever seen. At first glance, it seemed reptilian, massive, scaled, with powerful limbs that ended in claws that could tear through steel. But as the light shifted, those scales shimmered, shifting, in color like liquid metal, reflecting the forest around it in distorted fragments. Its eyes glowed with the same silver light as the being's, but far more intense, and as it opened its mouth, rows of teeth caught the glow of the heartstones. Reflection that the being beside them did not move. Instead, it spoke, its voice calm and steady. The guardian has come to weigh your worth. Elon glanced sharply at it. Weigh our worth? That thing looks like it's here to kill us. The being's gaze didn't shift. The two are not. Always different. The guardian lowered its head, nostrils flaring as it took in their scent. Sundar could feel the heat radiating from its body even from across the clearing. When it moved, it did so with terrifying precision, no wasted steps, no hesitation. Every muscle under its shifting skin perfectly controlled Dot without warning. It lunged. The ground shook as it closed the distance in seconds. Sundar barely had time to dive aside, feeling the rush of air as one massive claw slashed through the space where he had just been standing. The blow struck the pedestal instead, sending shards of stone flying. The heartstone didn't break. Instead, it pulsed once, and the guardian froze mid-motion, its head snapping toward Sundar. It knows. The being said simply. Lena scrambled to her feet, her voice sharp with panic. Knows what? That he carries the key. The being replied. The guardian roared again, the sound rattling Sundar's bones. It began to circle him slowly, each step deliberate, like a predator, testing the boundaries of its prey. Sundar's breathing quickened, but he forced himself to keep his eyes on it, refusing to show fear. Deep down, he remembered the voice in the vision, to open or to seal. Whatever this trial was, it was testing more than just strength. Elon, never one to stay still in danger. Stepped into the guardian's path, trying to draw its attention. Hey, over here, he shouted, waving his arms. The guardian didn't even glance at him. Its focus was locked entirely on Sundar. This isn't about fighting it, Sundar realized aloud, the words spilling out before he could stop them. It's about proving something. The being's silver eyes flickered faintly. Then prove it. But what? The guardian stepped closer, its massive head lowering until its eyes were level with his. Sundar could see himself reflected in the metallic surface of its scales, small, fragile, utterly outmatched. Its breath was hot against his skin, smelling faintly of minerals and something older, something that carried the weight of centuries. Every instinct told him to run. But instead he slowly extended his hand toward the creature's face. Elon hissed under his breath. "Are you insane?" The Guardian's eyes narrowed, its muscles tensing. Sundar's heart hammered, but he didn't pull back. "If you're here to judge," he said quietly, "then look. See who I am." For a moment, the world went still. The hum in the ground intensified until it felt like it was inside his chest, syncing with his heartbeat. Then, the Guardian leaned forward, pressing its forehead lightly against Sundar's palm. Instantly, a flood of images filled his mind. Memories from his own life, but also things that weren't his. He saw storms tearing across the island, creatures fleeing into the glowing forests, ancient figures building the stone archway. He saw battles, alliances, and moments where decisions had split the island's fate in two. In all of it, the Guardian was there, watching, protecting, choosing who stayed and who didn't, and then, just as suddenly it pulled back, the being stepped forward, speaking directly to the Guardian in a language that sounded like wind moving through stone. The Guardian listened, then gave a deep, rumbling sound, not a roar this time, but something almost like approval. "The Guardian accepts," the being said, finally .elo, and let out a sharp breath. "Great, so we passed, right? Trial over?" But the being's tone was heavier now. "You have passed the first gate. There are two more, and the next will not test only you." Before Sundar could ask what that meant, the ground under their feet began to shift. The cracked stone circle split wider, and a faint glow seeped up from the fissures. The hum grew into a steady, low-frequency vibration, and the Heartstone's light flared so brightly it hurt to look at. The being turned toward Sundar. "The choice is coming, and the cost will be greater than you imagine." The Guardian stepped aside, revealing a narrow path of black stone that had risen from the forest floor, leading deeper into the island. From somewhere far ahead, beyond the dense walls of trees, came the unmistakable sound of water. Not a gentle stream, but a rushing, thundering current. The being gestured toward it. "The river of echoes waits." Asterisk. The river of echoes, the path of black stone, stretched ahead like a scar through the forest. Its smooth surface strangely warm under their boots. It wound between towering trees whose leaves shimmered faintly, as though lit from within, casting shifting patterns of gold and silver across their faces. The hum they had felt since first stepping onto the island was louder here, deeper, resonating in the very marrow of their bones. Sundar felt it with every step, a constant reminder that this island was alive, aware, and watching them. No one spoke at first. The encounter with the Guardian had left them shaken, though none wanted to admit it. Elon walked slightly ahead, scanning the shadows as if expecting another creature to leap from the trees. Lena lagged a step behind Sundar, her gaze flicking toward him now and then, her expression a mix of curiosity and something more guarded. Sundar could feel the unspoken tension between them, that whispered message from the pool still lingering in their minds. "One of you carries the key. One of you will not leave alive." After nearly an hour, the air began to change. It grew heavier, filled with a deep rhythmic sound that at first seemed like the heartbeat of the island itself. But as they drew closer, Sundar realized it was water. A vast, unstoppable current. The path sloped downward, and the forest abruptly gave way to a wide river that cut through the island like a vein of liquid glass. The water wasn't blue or green, but clear, reflecting the sky above so perfectly it was almost disorienting. Yet beneath the surface, shapes moved, slow, shifting silhouettes that didn't quite match the rhythm of the current. The being was already waiting at the riverbank. Sundar hadn't even noticed when it had left them, but now it stood perfectly still, silver eyes fixed on the water. "This is the river of echoes," it said. "It shows the truth behind the face. It speaks in the voices you most trust and most fear." Lena stepped closer, peering into the water. "And we have to cross it?" The being's gaze shifted to her. "Not with your body, with your will." Alon raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly does that mean?" The being didn't answer. Instead, it gestured toward the water. Step in, and you will know. Sundar felt his pulse quicken. Something about the way the being spoke, as though it already knew what each of them would see, made the hair on the back of his neck rise. Still, he stepped forward first, the warm stone underfoot giving way to the cool, smooths of the riverbank. He dipped one boot into the water, and the world changed. He was no longer standing beside Elon and Lena. The forest, the river, even the air itself had vanished. He was back in his childhood home in Chennai, sitting at the old wooden table, where he had once done his schoolwork. Sunlight streamed through the small window, and his mother stood at the stove, humming softly as she stirred a pot. "Amma," he whispered, his throat tightening. She turned, smiling in that gentle way she always had. "Sundar, why are you here? You have so much work to do, so many people waiting for you." He wanted to reach out to tell her how much he missed her, how much he wished he could go back to those days. But before he could speak, her expression changed. Her smile faded, replaced by something sharper, heavier. "You've forgotten who you are," she said, her voice lower now. "You've built towers in the sky, but you've left cracks in the ground beneath you. What happens when those cracks open?" He took a step toward her, but the ground beneath him shifted like water. Suddenly, the kitchen dissolved into darkness. And from that darkness came another voice, his own, older, but twisted by doubt. "You will make the wrong choice. You will open the door, and the world will burn." The words hit him like a blow dot then. Just as quickly, the darkness shattered, and he was standing back on the riverbank, water dripping from his boots. Elon and Lena were staring at him, their faces pale. "What did you see?" Lena asked. He shook his head. "Not now." Elon didn't wait. "Fine, my turn." He stepped into the water, and in an instant his eyes glazed, his posture stiffening. Sundar watched him closely, noting the way. Elon's jaw clenched, the faint tremor in his hands. Whatever he was seeing, it wasn't pleasant. When Elon emerged, he didn't speak at all. He just shook his head once, muttered something under his breath, and walked a few paces away, staring out at the forest. Lena was last. She hesitated before, stepping into the river, glancing between the two men as if searching for some reassurance. But when her foot touched the water, she gasped sharply, and Sundar caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Fear, yes, but also recognition, as if what she saw was something she had long suspected. When she stepped back onto the bank, she looked at Sundar differently, not with open suspicion, but with a kind of quiet calculation. Like she had been given a piece of information she didn't yet know how to use. To being broke the silence. "The river has shown you your truth. It has weighed your resolve. Now the island will decide." The hum in the ground deepened. The water behind them rippled violently, and for a moment, Sundar thought something massive was rising from the depths. But instead, the black stone path reformed on the far side of the river, stretching deeper into the island. Elon exhaled. "So we keep going." "Yes," the being said. "To the final gate." As they stepped onto the new path, Sundar noticed Lena walking slightly closer to Elon than to him. Her body language had shifted, subtly but unmistakably. And in that moment, he realized something unsettling, whatever the river had shown. It had made her trust him less, but there was no time to dwell on it. The trees ahead were thinning, and beyond them, Sundar could see something glimmering in the distance. Tall spires of crystal, half buried in the earth, glowing faintly against the gathering clouds, and beneath that glow, a shadow moved. The voice from his vision whispered again in his mind. "The choice is near." The final gate, the crystal spires loomed ahead, their jagged peaks catching what little sunlight filtered through the thickening clouds. From a distance, they had seemed beautiful, almost fragile, like something carved by the hands of an artist. Up close, Sundar realized they were anything but fragile. Each spire rose dozens of meters into the air, their surfaces etched with the same shifting symbols he had seen since the moment they landed on the island. Faint light pulsed within them, in sync with the hum that had followed them since their arrival, and With each step closer, that hum grew almost unbearably loud. The being moved ahead without hesitation, its long strides carrying it toward a massive archway formed by two of the tallest spires. The air here was colder, sharper, as though it was drawn from a different season entirely. Sundar felt it in his lungs. Each breath seemed to demand more effort, like the island was testing even their ability to stand in this place. ELO, and walked beside him, glancing up at the arch. So, this is it? The final gate? Yes. The being replied, its voice carrying an echo that seemed unnatural. Beyond this is the heart of the island. The choice will be made there. Sundar didn't need to ask what choice. He had known since the vision in a Heartstone. But the weight of it pressed on him now in a way it hadn't before. Open or seal. Two paths. Two futures. One that could change history forever, and one that could erase it entirely. As they reached the base of the archway, the ground beneath them split with a sudden, deafening crack. From the fissure, a blinding light poured upward, and the air shimmered, like heat over desert sand. The hum became a deep, thrumming vibration that seemed to shake every cell in Sundar's body. Step forward, the being said, looking directly at him. Only you. Meena immediately stepped in front of Sundar. Wait, you're just going to send him in there? What if this is a trap? The being's gaze did not shift. He carries the key. The river has confirmed it. The guardian has confirmed it. The choice is his alone. Ilan glanced at Sundar, his voice low. You trust this thing? Sundar looked between them, feeling the weight of their eyes. I don't think it matters if I trust it. I think this is the only way we find out why we're here. Without waiting for another protest, he stepped past them, crossing under the archway. The light from the fissure surged upward, swallowing him whole. In an instant, he was no longer on the island. He stood in the middle of an impossibly vast chamber. The walls were made of crystal, but they didn't reflect him. Instead, each surface showed a different scene. Forests, oceans, mountains, cities, faces of people he knew, and faces he had never seen. Some scenes were filled with life and light, others with ruin and fire. It was as if the walls held countless versions of the world, each one real, each one possible. In the center of the chamber floated a sphere, not the Heartstone, but larger. Brighter, its surface shifting between colors that didn't seem to exist in the normal spectrum. It pulsed slowly, each beat releasing a ripple of energy that washed over him in waves of warmth and cold. You have come to the axis. The deep voice from before said, surrounding him without source. Here, all futures meet. Here, the choice is made. Sundar's throat was dry. What happens if I open? The sphere pulsed again. A door will connect this place to your world. Knowledge, power, and life, unlike any your kind is known, will flow through, but so will the dangers you are not ready to face. And if I seal, the island will sleep. It will close itself from your world for as long as your species walks it. Its knowledge will be lost to you. But so will its threats. Sundar felt the weight of the decision pressing into his chest. One path could advance humanity centuries in an instant. The other could keep it safe, but at the cost of losing something miraculous forever. As he stood there, the crystal walls shifted again, and this time they showed him himself. One image was him, older, standing in a world where the islands. Knowledge had reshaped cities into wonders of light and energy. But in the distance, shadows of strange creatures moved, and the sky burned faintly red. Another image showed him in a quieter world, one much like the present, where the island was forgotten, and humanity's struggles continued without change. Choose, the voice said. Now he thought of Ilan, always chasing the next leap forward. He thought of Lena, whose eyes had searched for understanding since the moment they landed. He thought of his mother's words in the vision. What happens when the cracks open? His hand trembled as he reached for the sphere. The light pulsed faster, as if it could sense his decision. He closed his eyes and made it. The chamber shook. The crystal walls flared, the images burning brighter before shattering into shards of light. The sphere's glow exploded outward, blinding him, and in the rush of energy, he thought he heard the voice one last time. So it will be. When the light faded, Sundar was standing back beneath the archway. Elan and Lena were there, eyes wide. But the being was gone. In its place, the guardian stood, silent, watching him. Well, Elan asked, "What did you do?" Sundar looked at the path behind them. The fissure was gone. The hum had faded. The forest was quiet. "I did what I thought was right," he said finally. Lena stepped closer. But which was it? He met her eyes. He'll know. In time, as they made their way back toward the ship, the island seemed different. The air was still, the trees unmoving, as though the place itself was holding its breath. Far above, the clouds broke, and a shaft of sunlight fell across the clearing where they had first landed. But in the depths of the forest, unseen by them, the symbols on the ancient archway shifted one last time, forming a single, glowing shape before fading into silence. And somewhere in the back of Sundar's mind, the voice whispered again, softer now, almost like a promise, "This is not the end."